You can start.
Hello, everyone. A very good evening. A very warm welcome to everyone to the sixth session of Fridays for Water. For those of you attending this series for the first time, here's a small introduction of the initiative. Friday Water's initiative of the W for W is an expansion and continuation of the signature communication series, Wednesdays for Water. The main idea is to make Fridays fun-filled and yet a fruitful activity with the future generation. There are 4 activities initiated as series for Friday Waters, which are water talkies, water reading sessions, water thesis club, water arts. The idea is to bring forward knowledge about water, which is available in various forms at one place to highlight issues, problems, and solutions. We also hope to increase the outreach of people who have been working in these areas. Each of the session takes place on a Friday. First Fridays for every month, we have water talkies. Second Fridays, like today, are dedicated to the book reading sessions. Third Fridays will host a thesis club, and the fourth is for water art session. These Friday sessions are aspired to be very fun-filled and as a fruitful learning activity. You can also follow us at www.w4w.in for regular updates. I will be typing that in the chat box shortly. For today's session, we're very happy to have Jenia Mukherjee, who will be speaking to us about her book, Blue Infrastructures, Natural History, Political Ecology, and Urban Development in Kolkata. Jenia Mukherjee is an assistant professor at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences in the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. She's investigating 5 large-scale international projects funded by the European Union, AHRC, UK, and SSHRC, Canada, focusing on coastal livelihood dynamics. She's the member of the 5-member Global Committee and the only Indian representative for the Association of East Asian Environmental History. Jenia has received prestigious awards, including the Dad Grant 2022, Nippon Foundation Fellowship 2021, Australian Leadership Awards Fellowship 2010 and 2015, and the UNESCO World Social Science Fellowship 2013. She was conferred the Carson Writing Fellowship in the year 2018-19 by the Rachel Carson Center for Environment and Society, Munich, Germany, for executing her book project, Blue Infrastructures, Natural History, Political Ecology, and Urban Development in Kolkata, which has been published by Springer Nature in 2020 as part of Urban Change in South Asia series, edited by Mary Ellen Zera. A very warm welcome to you, Jenia. And here's a little something about her book. Blue Infrastructures is a book that investigates the complex processes of Kolkata's urban development within a deltaic landscape that includes its rivers, tributaries, and wetlands. It traces the history and present condition of the elaborate canal networks and the unique system of sewage-fed fisheries and farming that made Kolkata a viable city in a vulnerable landscape. Dr. Mukherjee strings together a chronological narrative of Kolkata's formation by studying colonial archives dating back to the 1770s, state and municipal archives, and combining these with stakeholder interviews, including fishers, municipal, and state officials and activists. Her findings reveal a dynamic interplay between the city, its environment, technology, and politics that defy several conceptual binaries such as city, nature, urban, rural, land, water, and so on. And now I will hand over to Ashini, who will be our discussant for the session. Over to you, Ashini.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Ashini. I'm an architect and I work with People in Center Consulting in Ahmedabad, where I'm currently working on the issue of wastewater reuse in the city of Rajkot. Because as someone who works on wastewater and its political economy, Genia's work came across as very intriguing, and that's why I was roped in for this particular reading. So I think Jenia has prepared a brief presentation for us, which she would um, go through to orient us with the content of her book. So over to you, Jenia.
Yes, thank you very much, Garima and Ashini. And first and foremost, thank you to Mansi, and also thanks to Anuradha for putting us in touch together at IIT Kharagpur. And I think that, that this is such an opportunity, and I really like when you introduced Friday Waters to me, I was fascinated to know about the different types of work that Friday Waters is engaged with. And I would love to engage with, work with Friday Waters and have some more innovative ideas through which we can also, plan more and more outreach activities, because I think that's also the need of the hour. So how and why we should be actually, putting a lot of energies to translate theoretical discourses into actions and concerted actions, sustained actions, so that, real change, because we know that real change can actually start and be anchored at the ground level. So I think I saw this dream many years back, almost more than a decade back, and I wanted to it's a personal story. I think Blue Infrastructures is more a personal than a professional story, and the binaries between personal and professional, between risk, resilience, between state, local, get blurred. So Blue Infrastructure, I think, is the story of blurring and dismantling otherwise sacrosanct categories which appear as or which are actually placed before us as contradictory binaries. So it's a long history, and in the preface of the book, generally in academic writing, it is now said that don't go through the preface, don't go through the monologue, just start from the introduction. Because if you really need to capture the essence of an article or a hypothesis, just go through the introduction and start upright. But I think I'll highly discourage from this, so far as this particular book is concerned, because this preface and acknowledgement section is important, because it talks about this journey, the journey of the book itself, and why I try to discuss things that have been finally discussed in Blue Infrastructures, and why that discussion remained important. To me, it was very important. It seemed to be quite important 12 years back. And I still, the journey is on. And I think I have not deviated from that research direction. And I think this particular theme will be my forthcoming research area as well for the next few decades, I guess. So with this, I think I'll just be discussing the framework, which is the HUE framework, historical, urban, political ecology. And I'll also explain what led me to formulate. Now, when I'm saying I have formulated HUE, there is a disclaimer that, of course, this also needs to be contextualized within the larger theoretical underpinnings of both political ecology and urban environmental history. So because urban environmental history and urban political ecology, if you see that since the last 30 years or so, last 2.5 or 3 decades, lot of research, works are pouring in these two major domains, which are part of this larger urban ecological social sciences frameworks. And political ecology, again, now, many natural scientists, they are also quite intrigued. For example, Ashini, I think you come from the architecture background, but I think you definitely find political ecology useful, right? So, so it intersects across different domains, and it transcends disciplinary boundaries and disciplines. And also, for example, Paul Robbins says that political ecology, it's a community of practice. So it's also important, how can we think about political ecology as an engaged praxis than, theory as such. So with this, quickly, I think I would be introducing or explain HUE and why I found this framework to be important to address and answer some of the questions that kept bothering me for long. so far as the story of Kolkata's water bodies, canals, wetlands, inlets, creeks, rivers, arteries are concerned, and everything as a composite system. So that's blue infrastructures. So many waters, together. And it's not only the story of waters, but also, that river is not only a natural or a material phenomenon, but at the same time, river is also a social phenomenon. It's a cultural thing. It's political. So a river is as much as political, cultural, social, technical as it is, natural. So just if I quickly now share the screen, I think this is visible. Yeah. So if you just see the back flip, the back cover of the book, this two lines, this phrase is there in the back cover of the book, the back flap of the book. So here you can see the front cover of the book, and this is I have extracted this few of these words from the back cover of the book, and this is something again which is close to my heart. And I think if someone can deeply probe into this, just these few words, I think one can capture the crux or the essence of what I wanted to convey in blue infrastructures. So, so it is in these blue infrastructures that the anecdote of origin, the account of functioning, and the apprehension of survival of the city is rooted. So we can see how the past, present, and posterity, they are kind of clubbed, they are weaved together, and how the city and these blue infrastructures, they coexist. So there is a history of co-evolution, there is the history of co-functioning, and the relationship between the city and her larger ecological infrastructures, it's very, very mutual, it's symbiotic, of course reciprocal. And so like the survival of the wetlands, for example, depend on the city and vice versa. And the climate resilience efficacy, or the flood resilience efficacy of the city of Kolkata, which is otherwise, like it's a deltaic city, so it's highly vulnerable to climate change. So if you go to any of these reports, even the latest assessment report of IPCC, you see how scientists have generated warnings and apprehensions about the future of Kolkata. Because she's a deltaic city, and and we can see that already Kolkata is encountering some of these problems. But then the thing is that if we can save our wetlands and blue infrastructures, again I have already explained that this water infrastructure is a composite whole, then I think so they are not separate. So the city and nature, city and this blue lines together, blue patches, they it's an embedded, ingrained entity. Now coming to the framework, I have been trained in environmental history, because environmental history and also urban environmental history more specifically, and it's not a very old subject, so it's a recent domain. And as you understand that as environmental history or urban environmental history, so the scholars mainly rely on archival sources, historical documents in the forms of letters, like correspondence, reports, diary entries, revenue reports, so reports in many forms from different agencies. So you have to depend, and this is like hard work, because you have to keep depending on these sets of data, and sometimes there is lack of data, so you then have to triangulate it with other sets of data to even try to address archival silence at some points of time. So this ecological history, or more specifically urban environmental history, and then political ecology, again more specifically urban political ecology, and political ecology relying again a lot on ethnography, on field work. So why I found it important, significant to cross-fertilize these two urban environmental social sciences domain. So because like, for example, environmental history, it could provide long-term temporal scale to political ecological analysis, And on the other hand, political ecology also, enabled me to map mediations among actors across the long temporal range that I'm talking about. In this case, more specifically, colonial and contemporary Kolkata. Not before that, Devjanidhi has done her, for example, to an extent she has covered the pre-colonial part as well, but I have not covered because the story of blue infrastructure is absolutely rooted with the origin of the city of Kolkata as a city, as the urban, after the imperial infiltration during the late 17th century. So, and again, I gave the disclaimer that I said that youth is all about historical urban political ecology. It is all about cross-fertilization of these two research methodologies or domains, urban ecological history and urban political ecology, where you can deploy a wide range of methods from oral history to transit work to illustration analysis and several other things. So you can really experiment with methods and keep triangulating.
Jenia, sorry, 10 minutes are up, so you can just take a few more minutes with the PPT.
Yes, maybe two more minutes. Yeah. So now, so you can really kind of apply different methods together, and that is why you can also, for example, if you have certain questions which you are not being able to answer with one or two methods, you can apply other methods so that you can get comprehensive answers to that. So, for example, these days, the water scientists, they have become fascinated with pluralistic water research. So I think it encourages methodological pluralism. And the final thing that I would like to say now, and then go over to Ashini. So youth is my formulation, but at the same time, I think I was extremely inspired by people like Michael Watts, Diana Davis. So Diana Davis is an environmental historian who has worked on different issues, including the urban, in the global south mainly. And Michael Watts, I think all of us know Michael Watts, and he's a very radical political ecologist. And he pointed out, for example, he said that why ethnography is important in historical analysis. Because he said that, ultimately archival records are the products of the stagecraft. So then how authentic, how reliable can they be? So they need to get validated with, other methods, right? So that is why we should not overtly, hugely, rely on archival sources. Right? On the other hand, and also like the nature of archives, it varies. It's not the same everywhere. On the other hand, Diana Davis pointed out that why and how historical analysis also remain very important, because it is history that helps political ecology, or rather that guards political ecology against our historical and our political analysis. So I think all these different kinds of arguments and the different empirical case studies through which they placed their arguments, it played it played a major influence on me. And when I really wanted to uncover the history of these blue infrastructures of Kolkata, because a lot of controversies were also going on. A lot of debates and controversies were on in terms of the fishers accessing wastewater in the wetlands, in terms of the importance of the city of Kolkata, because the city really does not have the zeal to mobilize and activate her people, her citizens, to kind of raise their voice against ecological degradation. So Kolkata was facing all these charges from different fronts. So, and it was a bit uncomfortable situation for me and for many of us. And this was a context which provoked me to really dig deep into some of these questions. And I think the answers to an extent are available in the book.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenia, for that explanation of your research methods. I've read a lot of historical as well as contemporary accounts of urban development and water infrastructure in Indian cities, but very few that take a long-term temporal, a longue durée view of the subject, not just looking at the past dependence, but also looking at the political implications during critical transitional periods. So that was quite revelatory in your book. So I'm going to raise a few questions. So starting with chapter 4 of your book. So in chapter 4, you talk about the untamed practices of sewage-fed fisheries and farming that began to take shape around what you call the tamed interventions, such as the canals and the outfall schemes in the 1940s. So can you describe some of the collaborative arrangements or the institutional dynamics that took place between the Calcutta Corporation, the fishermen and the farmers around that time? And can you also dwell a bit on how they relate to the commonly accepted dichotomies such as municipal versus local or scientific versus folk knowledge?
Yes, thank you for the question. Would you like me to share slides, because there are maps and the question is quite technical?
Sure, that'd be good.
Yes. Yes. So yes, I think this is a very, very important question, and I just mentioned that some of the questions were bothering me. So this was one question which was definitely bothering me, and I happened to be the student of Dr. Dhruv Ghosh, who was the sanitation engineer and who is also known as the father of the East Kolkata wetlands. And so I have closely worked with him. And he was very, very fascinated with this wastewater recovery practices in the wetlands. And I think he played a crucial role in making the state recognize this system, and a lot of other things followed after that. But one major disagreement that I started having with him was about this, binary understanding of a state, at one extreme, and then the community at the other side of the spectrum. So again, this question is technical, and also very quickly, I think I'll not be able to discuss everything. But if you can see this particular map, right? So if you see this particular map, you can see that this is the technical design of the Eastern Canal system that the British came up with between this system, the Eastern Canal system. This was developed roughly between 1770s, because 1770s the first intervention was made when the British excavated Talis Nala, reviving parts of the Adigonga, which was one of the major distributaries of the Ganga River, and then number of other canals were excavated. So the names of these canals are here in the table, and in this way, the system catered to the dual purposes of trade and transportation on one hand, and drainage towards sanitation on the other. Now, what happened is that you can see the Vidyadhari River here, right? Yeah. So the Vidyadhari River, it played the role of the outfall channel for a long period of time. But after that, it started showing signs of deterioration due to several reasons, including both natural and artificial. And then, there were a lot of debates in the Calcutta Corporation that what would be the alternative outfall channel then for the city of Kolkata. And then they came up with this alternative scheme, which is known as the Kulti lock scheme. And this Kulti lock was constructed, and Kulti replaced Vidyadhari. during the 1940s, early 1940s. Now, this is very significant, and I would like to consider this as a departure, like a landmark event in the for the ecological history of the city, because with this change, this the marshes which were previously saline marshes, like which were saline fed marshes, and that is why the name itself was saltwater lakes, because the Vidyadhari used to carry saline water from the Bay of Bengal, the tidal river, and this is an undulating plain, undulating area. So the water could not, so the Vidyadhari spilled the saline water in the marshes, and the water could not get channelized out, and that led to the formation of the saltwater lakes. And it's a very, very big, so it has an old geological history as well. Now the thing is that, like, with the change of this outfall channel from Vidyadhari to Kulti, that led to a massive transformation in the ecological regime of the marshes. So they got transformed from saline fed to sewage fed marshes. So these are the wetlands. And because, like, then what happened is that it's an entire, so now I will come to this collaborative arrangement. And so what happened is that, so when these marshes transformed into sewage fed marshes, so the people, and there's an arrangement, it's a very, very complex arrangement. And these people, they are directly involved into this wastewater recovery practices, and it's a win-win situation for the city of Kolkata, because every every day the East Kolkata wetlands receives 750 million liters of waste, and then this wastewater gets recycled, and 22 tons of fish and 150 tons of vegetables are produced by the people. And so it generates, like, provisioning services for the people, livelihood opportunities for them. And that is why Mukherjee Ghosh, to a great extent, he put a lot of weightage on the community, on what he called low-cost folk technology, the technology or the techniques that these people they practice to recover wastewater. And then he also talked about the state, or the development projects, which is also true, where the state state is basically projected as the harbinger of development against the ecological dynamics of the wetlands. But that is not true, because, for example, the Kulti log scheme, it itself, like, so if you go through the government reports, so if you consult Irrigation and Waterways Department report, you see that the East Kolkata wetlands was actually the brainchild of the government only, of engineers at the Calcutta Corporation. And the Department of Fisheries was also involved in this venture. So it will be really erroneous to understand that, in this case, communities and the state and the government agencies, they are positioned against each other, right? And so this is, you can see that, so the sustainable flows between Kolkata and the East Kolkata wetlands, and how both the city and the wetlands are dependent on each other. And this entire system is managed across a complex array of kind of entanglement between technical apparatuses and social elements. Log gates, sewers, pump offices, everything is involved in this story. And you can see that, after wastewater enters through the dry weather flow canal, which is the main canal, carrying out conduit, which is the main conduit of wastewater, then the wastewater reaches to the bheris, that is the sewage-fed ponds, wastewater ponds, and these the wastewater reaches these bheris through small inlet canals, which were excavated by the zamindars, by actually people who were employed by the zamindars. So there was an arrangement where everyone was involved. So multi-stakeholder engagement, of course, was there. Otherwise, the system would not have kind of emerged. And then when wastewater reaches the ponds, so you can see that there are 3 different types of ponds. So they are known as series of waste stabilization ponds. And there are several distinct stages through which waste water gets transformed or is recycled. And you can also see the role of like non-human actors in this, including water hyacinth, coliform bacteria, snails, and whatnot. So this table is there. I'll also be happy to share this with you. It's there in the book itself. So it's a very complex process where all these actors, they together participate. And this collaboration, I think, is the key word than conflict. So once we shift our vantage point, I think our perception on the functioning of East Kolkata wetlands can actually get changed. So sorry for this long answer, and this is a bit underdeveloped. I must say this. I came up with this table long back in 2015. So I have not in this particular presentation I have not updated the table, but but this is a basic. It's like you can consider it as a primary table with primary information on who are the stakeholders, who are the agencies who are involved in this, and what roles and responsibilities they play in the management and governance of wastewater in EKW. So the idea that is absolutely community owned, community managed, I think is not right.
Great. Thank you so much for that reply. And I think it's a very wonderful finding, because when we think of the history of hydraulic infrastructure in India, on one hand, you have the work of Juan de Souza, who talks about making of a colonial hydrology, where he talks about the colonial technocratic initiatives of canal building. And on the other hand, you have volumes such as Dying Wisdom, which are more about indigenous, which is exclusively about the indigenous homegrown systems of water harvesting and irrigation that have evolved on the subcontinent. But what you bring about, what you bring forward, an argument that these are not mutually exclusive, and that many of the systems often co-evolve. So that's a very unique and nuanced finding, and I'm sure many of us are going to find that a very helpful way of looking at the colonial period, and especially the intermediate period around the 1940s. So I'm going to transition to some of the later parts of your book. So in around chapter 6, chapter 7, you talk about the slew of urban development and residential sprawl initiatives that were brought about in Calcutta, most famously in Salt Lake City in the 1960s. And also more recently, the metro rail construction in the 1990s over the Adi Ganga. And many of these projects were quite contentious, and a lot of environmental activists, as well as project-affected people, took offense to many of these initiatives, because obviously their livelihoods and their aspirations were impacted by these projects. So in that context, in chapter 8 of your book, you describe 3 varieties of environmentalism that have been observed in Calcutta. So firstly, in the case of the protests against the metro construction over the Adi Ganga, there was a clash between the middle class environmental activists who were concerned with restoring the health of their heritage river, and the grassroots activism of the squatters who were concerned about their eviction and loss of livelihood. However, none of these agitations were successful, and eventually the project moved forward and the Adi Ganga was lost. On the other hand, you mentioned that the protests to protect the East Calcutta wetlands were much more successful due to the involvement of multiple stakeholders. Can you elaborate more on the positive impact of these initiatives, and also what were some of the blind spots?
Yes. So I think again, a very, very important question, and varieties of urban environmentalism. This is something which is also like a lot of work on this as well, starting with Amita Babiska's framework on the bourgeois environmentalism. And then people like, for example, Pablo Ghosh, he has also used it, applied it within the context of Kolkata when he talked about this neoliberal urban development projects in Kolkata in the same period of time, which I also talk about in this particular book. Now, what was happening was that, this, like, as you mentioned, that the metro railway pillars constructed on the Adi Ganga Trolleys Canal, and the canal system, the entire canal system, it was converted from navigable river routes or navigable trade routes to nallas, to just carriers of waste water. A lack of maintenance, a lot of degradation, they got polluted, choked. And like, I asked many people, like, what do you think is the reason behind this deterioration of this otherwise this fascinating water route that was already there, through which British earned a lot of revenue. Now, unfortunately, I found a very linear answer, and the answer was that so far, as the canal system is concerned, the British period was a golden period, the golden age. And when we make an entry to the contemporary period, then the contemporary period is actually can be perceived as the era of degradation or deterioration and also displacement. So, but then I again think that this kind of an argument is a bit linear and reductionist, because when I started going through the archival reports, one interesting finding was that from 19 or actually after 1890s, so from like the 1900s or so, there was like a kind of an archival void or silence in so far as the revenue reports were concerned, because we can see that how aggressively the colonial administration actually they maintained these reports, the proceedings, these revenue reports, etc. From where actually I could trace that how this canal system was fruitful, like 7 times more fruitful than the Eastern railway system between 1850 and like 1890s or so. But after that, suddenly what I found was that there was a dearth of data. So then like this was a mystery. So I had to consult then other reports from other agencies, and definitely found out that like the entire shift. So there was a shift from canals, actually first from boat traffic to steamer traffic, and then to railways. Absolutely. And what we find is that, and through this we understand that this one needs to also understand this succession of technologies aged within the calculus of rule of the statecraft. So there is no doubt about that. So this kind of an understanding that in the colonial period, the British were very conscious about the canal system, but then there was no maintenance during the contemporary period is hugely challenging and problematic. So then, like, so far as the wetlands are concerned, we can again see that, as you mentioned, that from the 1960s or so, the wetlands started getting converted into real estate, into concrete. So they started they started emerging as a speculative space. So a lot of investments going on, kind of like converting these wetlands into like concrete big buildings. You can see atmosphere here, but this is one of the very recent buildings. And the advertisement read like, would you like to have your apartment in the clouds? So, but at the cost of wetlands. So that part was not there, but yeah. And this is definitely a lucrative construction project on the eastern periphery of Kolkata. But then what was happening was that, since the formation or since the sanction of the Salt Lake Township project from 1960s, when Bidhan Chandra Rai was the chief minister of Bengal, to Rajarhat, and to multiple other small scale, moderate scale development projects that Kolkata has visualized in her eastern part on the peri-urban interface of the city, they definitely had done a lot of harm to the wetlands and thus to the ecosystem services that the city and also the people accrue from the wetland ecosystem. Now, one major criticism, sorry for this long background, but then one major criticism for the city was that the city is very timid, docile, passive. And so, the citizens are not bothered. So, Kolkata is not like Bangalore or Chennai, where, people are very active, they really bother about nature. And so hence Kolkata did not see any wave of environmental activism or environmental. This is again another term which was brought to the city, which is wrong, because people were very bothered. And here we find many shades of environmental activism that, so for example, if we just consider two case studies. So one, the Adigonga Talisnala case study, and the second one, if you take, is Kolkata wetland. There are several other cases as well. So, and I'm very happy to the public, Pradeep Kakkar and Banani Kakkar, they recently, just 2-3 months back, they published a small book called Once Upon a City. And if you go through that book, so it's a citizen science book. So if you go through that book, you will see that how people were actually mobilizing, how they got activated, against several issues, and how they were, kind of through collective action, they were really bothered about ecological degradation that the city was facing. So they were putting pressure on the state. So, coming back to these two case studies. So the first one, the Adigonga Talis Canal case study. We see that this case study is a bit complex. If we try to understand the nature of environmentalism surrounding the Adigonga Talis Nala preservation case. So what happened is that you can see Reboti Ranjan Babu here is Reboti Ranjan Bhattacharya, and he represents the so-called quote-unquote, the elite section of the society, where these people, they were really bothered to save the river, the Adigonga, because even before the inception of the metro project, the river was in a very bad state. The canal was in a very bad state. So this Reboti Ranjan Bhattacharya, along with several other eminent scholars and scientists of the city, they collaborated. They collaborated with each other, and they wrote letters to different agencies, and they tried to kind of put pressure on the central government so that Adigonga gets restored. And also as part of the gap, because a lot of funds were available in the Ganga Action Plan, that time, so 1990s. But one major problem was that they had apprehensions about the squatters that inhabited, which sprouted up on the banks of the Adigonga. So again, it has a complex history, post-partition period, influx of refugees, several other waves of migration to the city due to several reasons, etc. But then these people, they were happy with the proposal of the central government to actually displace, to approve squatters and clean the two banks, both the banks of the river, so that the river can be revived as a heritage river. But on the other hand, when this movement was initiated, then we see how different grassroots organizations, then some of the names are here, they are all native grassroots organizations of the city, and different grassroots organizations having specific agendas. So few working for the agenda of women or women empowerment, child rights, and and all these issues like child rights, women, or gender, they all intersect with the larger issue of ecology, ecological degradation and ecological preservation. So they protested against the type of environmentalism that that got initiated that time on the Adigonga, and they said that no, the people, they should not be removed. The squatters should not be removed or uprooted from the banks of the. So there was a clash. So we see clashes, between these different varieties of environmentalism on the issue of Adigonga. The bad news, or I don't know, the news is that these different varieties of environmentalism, no variety, neither variety of environmentalism could actually survive, because the metro project, it put the last name into the coffin. And this man, you can see Subhash Dotto here. So when I interviewed him in 2019, he said that, I till date I had filed 101 public interest litigations before the High Court, and only one case that I have lost is the Adigonga case. And what was the reason? Because of the Railways Act. So it's the colonial leftover of the Act, where the Act says that the railways have the right to kind of construct over, under, below any river, any land, anything as such. So, and that is why they lost. Both these groups, all these groups actually lost their agenda. So their agenda could not get accomplished. So neither the river, nor the people, nor the squatters could be saved. So, but this is an interesting case study where you see that there was a tussle between these two arguments, major arguments. So heritage, heritage. What do we need to see? What do we need to preserve? Heritage or basic human rights. So, and we'll be happy to know that we have kind of elaborated the argument that is already there in infrastructures in chapter 8. So now there is also another book chapter specifically focusing on the Adigonga issue, where we could cover where we advanced this argument and validated it with more data. And quickly coming to the East Kolkata wetlands case or case study, this book unfortunately has been banned, and I think from the title you can understand why it has been banned by this German researcher Hans Dembowski, and taking the state to the court. So how the state was actually dragged to the court by many people, even the bureaucrats, they were involved into a conspiracy. So I had the opportunity and the fortune to work with Dr. Ashish Ghosh, the director of the Zoological Survey of India, and he was very bold, and he, I think, kind of spearheaded spearheaded environmental activism on the East Kolkata wetlands issue in the 1990s, and from backdoor, and he was supporting public, and then the case was fought for almost a year or so, and it's an enthralling history of how, for the first time, the Chief Justice Umesh Chandra Banerjee, he left the courtroom and visited the East Kolkata wetlands, and he said that not only the waste recycling region, not only the WRR, but the entire 12,500 hectares should be preserved, because one needs to understand wetlands as a part of this entire intertidal basin. So and this was also the case due to which the green bench was formed for the first time in the Calcutta. So it's a very strong history of environmental activism. So again, this understanding or lopsided perspective that Kolkata, the citizens of Kolkata do not bother for nature, environment, it's not true. And the fight is still on. So you can see that this is the final thing I'm mentioning here right now. So this flyover, the 6 kilometers flyover on the wetlands, it of course will do a lot of harm. And this is the new project. But again, we see that how people have come together. And here, when I say people, they include, people from different strands, different strata of society, how they are trying hard to actually to stop and halt this project. And one good news is that that when in 1992 public won the case over state, then after a period of 10 years, after 1 decade, East Kolkata wetlands also got the Ramsar status in 2002. And this Ramsar status, I think, is very, very important. And the best thing that is happening in the city now is that many big buildings and projects have been demolished by the Kolkata police and the East Kolkata Wetland Management Authority. I think we have a brilliant CTO over there right now. And also like, so for example, one controversial thing is that like this big meditation camp and center by Ravi Shankar has been badly demolished, which is a very good news actually for the city of Kolkata, and people are trying hard. So what we still see is there, and that we are surviving. I think a lot of efforts had gone into this.
That's great. It's very inspiring to see the enthusiasm and the radicalism of the citizens of Calcutta to preserve their environment. And on the whole, I think that's one of the charms of your book, is that because you've been able to give such a long period perspective, and you managed to capture all these historical continuities, is what has helped me at least to be able to understand some of the developments in my own city in a more nuanced way, and to be able to look past a lot of these binaries. And I think that's also a very valuable lesson to learn for all of those who are activists or environmentalists or into advocacy in any capacity in our own cities. It's very important, I believe, also based on your findings, to have a big tent rather than squabble over who is the best ally. I think that's interesting finding. We're bringing this presentation, this event to a close. So I'm going to raise the last question from my end, and then we'll move over to some of the audience questions. Would you just quickly share some of your ongoing
yeah. So the ongoing projects, right?
Yeah, just very quickly, if you could just talk about some
yes.
of the books.
So I think like the two like one project, one major project, but it's like a short project, duration wise, but scale wise, like it's I mean it's not very short. So that is where the challenge is. We have to like it has been very hectic, but at the same time, like a lot of learning opportunity. So what is happening is that I am now part of this MOOC course. So this that grant is all about this massive online course on urban ecological heritagescapes through understanding urban ecological heritagescapes through interactive governance. So where we are actually doing a kind of we are applying comparative urbanism theories. We are trying to understand like two cities, lake and their ecological patches, like the lakes of Bangalore and wetlands of Kolkata. And I mean, it's taking an interesting turn now. And we have to complete this project by October. And the best part is that it's not like classroom recordings, or it's not so transit work and field footages, videography. So it's very innovative. So I think this is a good. It can be if done properly. So that's the challenge. So it can craft meaningful pedagogical interventions. And what is very important is that we are taking video footages from those lakes and from those lively, vibrant ecosystems. At the same time, we are having interviews on those spots, and we are interviewing many people, all the voices. We are trying to so that people can hear all the voices from the horse's mouth, from not our mouths. But the challenge is how we weave all the snippets together and produce this 10-hour long MOOC course. But till now we remain excited, though it's hectic, but we really remain very excited with this MOOC. I have Roktima here with me. Roktima, Chodrodip, we are all part of this MOOC. We are spending sleepless nights. But I think like what is very important is that I think the students and commoners, everyone will enjoy when they will be able to access this MOOC, because it will be open-ended. So open-ended means it will be open access. So I'm trying it through the individual platform, but let's see. And it will not be like my other courses, for example, water society, sustainability, or urbanization and environment, because this is going to be very, very interactive. So we would like to give you the feel that you are actually watching a movie. So let's see how it comes out. And we also have a couple of other plans, but they're all in the pipeline. But all, in the line of doing a more interactive. They are like interactive projects. They are no more bound within the walls of typical classrooms.
Great. So for whoever is interested in the course that Jenia just mentioned on urbanization and environment, I've dropped the link in the chat box. So you can look that up. And we'll just quickly take a few questions from our audience. So, a second. So we had a question.
Sir had raised hand, huh? So Ramesh Chandra sir had raised hand.
Yeah. Sir, can you turn on your microphone and you can raise your question? Is he still with us?
I think we can go ahead with the questions in the chat box, Ashini, for
okay.
now.
Okay, Ramesh sir, we'll wait for you. In the meanwhile, Mansi raised the question that when you take the East Calcutta wetlands in today's context, when we are promoting the chemically induced centralized wastewater treatment, how viable are these systems still, and do you see a possibility of a kind of a synergy between the new centralized mechanized systems and these kind of nature-based systems?
Yeah, so if I have understood this question correctly, it's about whether this East Kolkata wetlands has the viability at all, or these STPs are more viable in terms of because there are quality questions.
Importantly, because we are putting chemicals in STP, and because EKW was more about nature based, and we are doing fish, and it's a food park.
Yes. So I think again, this is something on which lot of debates, discussions are going on, and you can understand the different lobbies having their take on this particular thing. So you are saying that the SPPs are not eco-friendly, but they say that the East Kolkata wetlands are actually not eco-friendly because there has been a change in the quality of wastewater, and this is true because we don't have cow sheds anymore in Kolkata. So there was a ban on this cow shed and cattle shed, and this gobar, that's the cow dung. It used to play a very important role as so far as the quality of wastewater was concerned. But now the fishers, they don't receive this cow dung effluent at all. So they are also complaining against the quality of wastewater, and on the other hand, there is an increase in the inorganic waste. So the toxic materials and shampoo, plastic bottles, detergents, etc. But even after saying this, I am continuously in touch with the wetlands. So after every 2-3 months, I pay a visit to the wetlands, and this is very, very regular. So I think that still the wetlands are extremely viable. Not because of anything else, but because of the fact that as the community, the entire community is thriving on this particular ecosystem, so they take the onus. In this case, they actually take the onus to manage the wetlands. So if there is a problem, there is anything wrong, there are issues relating to technicalities, so they come up with ways through which, and eco-friendly ways actually, because they don't want to, for example, use antibiotics also and artificial fish feed, etc. So they come up with natural ways through which they try to tackle the problem at the local level. And most of the times, it actually works. So, but unfortunately, in 2017, like two of my collaborators, whom I took to the wetlands, they, wrote an article raising the issue that how safe is it to consume fish from the wetlands, and they also used some of these technical parameters from the WHO and so. And there are some reports and there are some investigations which are on those lines. But I think, there are no there are no reports at all of any health issues or anything else from the wetlands. And Jadavpur University, Oceanography Department, Chemical Engineering Department, they do regular, they conduct regular tests. And there are of course, there has been a change in the quality. I'm not saying, and maybe this crisis can, even the intensity of the crisis can can get more serious. But till date, I don't think that there can be any question on the viability of this particular. So the people who are, or the groups who are promoting STPs, I must say that they strongly belong to the corporative.
Thank you.
Right. And
Political ecology of it, huh?
Yes.
Thank you. Ashini, over to you.
yeah, we had one more question from Alka, which is regarding your methodology. She wants to know how you validate or authenticate the information from the archival sources when you use it in your academic writing.
Yes. So yeah, so validation actually means that so validation, I think it is inseparable with the idea of cross validation. So you have to continuously triangle. So there's a methodology called triangulation. So which means that where you need to keep validating your facts with different types of sources that you have managed to gather from different people, different places, different reports or documents, and then need to weave a story. So what I would like to say is that there is something called storylines. So I think I'm very inspired by one social scientist who talked about the storylines, which means that there are multiple stories, repressed stories, suppressed stories, dominant stories, right? So number of stories, and especially within the context of urban ecological palimpsests, the storylines are so very important. And who is speaking? Who are given the voice? Like, what are the records that are actually preserved? What make way to the archives even? How do you understand archives? So these are different questions, and of which we don't have simple answers. So what we can do is that I think, we just need to focus on a particular issue, dig deep into the particular component of research and see how best we can, address the component following different methods and different formats. So I think these days I find a lot of, multinodal methodology to be very, very significant, because that keep on kind of providing checks and balances to the authenticity, to reliability, to authenticity, and all these different issues that remain part of this kind of subjective research. Part of this kind of ecological, socio-ecological research, where objectivity is a major question.
Great. Do we have? I think we're all done with the chat box, but is there anyone else who has anything to ask? Mansi, Garima.
Yeah, I had a question. If no one has a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so Jenia, you spoke about how there has been some concern regarding the quality of water that is, or the sewage that is going into the wetlands. So, I mean, when the British made it, or pre-independence time, we didn't use Harpic, and a lot of trash was also not going into the sewage. So, I also understand that STPs also are not actually very good at filtering out such chemicals. In terms of a natural system like Kolkata's wetlands, how do we address this problem? I mean, is there a way to modify the wetland in a natural way so they can deal with such chemicals in a better way? Or does the answer solely lie in reducing the outflow of such chemicals? So at the consumer end, one decides that, okay, we're not going to use this, and even at a industrial end, because that kind of wastewater also ends up there.
Yeah. Yes, I think like the answers are already there in your question, and because like these are all the different possibilities, and again, lot of discussions going on this same issue of the quality of wastewater. And like when East Kolkata Wetlands also got this Ramsar status in 2002. After that, there was an interesting interesting case which is known as Mehta versus the state, and this was about the pollution load, in the Ganga and also the arteries and her distributaries. It also included, this Adi Ganga, Tanis Nala, and the canal system of Kolkata as part of the lower Ganga basin. And so the idea was that, of course, Mehta won over the state, where the state was then bound to relocate, this canneries from the Topshia Tijola areas because they were creating a lot of pollution. But unfortunately, when they were relocated, they finally found space in Bantola, which is again, part of the wetlands. So it's a very tricky question. But what happened is that they say that, in Bantola, they have more appropriate system to deal with this waste from the tanneries. But again, that's also not totally correct, because the fishers keep complaining against the foul smell, and also you can see the color of the water. And what is happening is that there are again multiple issues, because there are protests regarding this. One important thing was that during the British times, and this sedimentation tanks were constructed at the Bantola log gate. So the idea was that, the sedimentation tanks, to an extent, will treat the wastewater, and then the treated wastewater will finally enter through the inlet canals, and then this partially treated wastewater will serve the bins. But these sedimentation tanks did not function for long. That's for 5-6 years, and then they became defunct. So one major possibility could be actually, and on which discussions are going on, could be actually to revive this and restore these sedimentation tanks. Then then the viability of the EKW, I think, will get better ensured. But there are multiple other opportunities, and there are several things which are actually going on. As I mentioned, that the fishers they're trying out several adaptive mechanisms, coping strategies, which till date it's not a major issue. But again, we cannot be so careless and indifferent to this, because this is going to be an issue within next maybe like 1 decade or so. So one again final good thing is that there is this now integrated management plan, 100 crores budget proposal to properly restore the EKW and address some of the challenges that the fishers and the wetlands are facing right now. And this will be kind of executed by the EKW. So with EKWMA, the East Kolkata Wetland Management Authority, which is the statutory organization to protect the wetlands. So EKWMA will be working with different agencies and grassroots organizations, even NGOs, together to execute several components of the integrated management plan. So I think there's a lot of hope. There are issues, but I think that East Kolkata Wetlands it's not a declensionist, but actually a hopeful story.
Right. Yeah, and I think, Jenia, you also mentioned in your book that the water hyacinths that the fishers use to sort of break the tidal wave.
Yes.
So that's one function, but they also have the other function, which is they absorb a lot of the heavy metal ions.
Yes.
So a lot of the heavy metals that were coming in or leaching through the leather tanneries is actually being dealt with through the hyacinth. So I think that's another interesting point that you raised in your book. So we'll bring this to a close. I think I'm just going to invite Alka. She had a question regarding multi-stakeholder involvement in environmental activism. So if you could just turn on your microphone, maybe you can.
Hi, Jenia.
Yeah.
Hi, Jenia. Thank you
Hello.
thank you for very interesting presentation, Jenia. It's a wonderful to listen to you. I just was wondering about one thing, that it seems that the space for activists and as well as for users who are not really connected so much is reducing to raise their concerns. So in such a situation, how multi-stakeholder processes or polycentric things would work?
So what you are trying to ask is that how this activism can continue.
Yeah, so the space for PILs or activists or users has reduced over last 2 years, at least 10 years maybe. How does now this bringing together people for raising the concerns would happen? Yeah. It's a big worry in many ways. Yeah.
Yes. So yes. Again, environmental activism or urban environmentalism, it cannot be understood through broad stroke of the brush, because it's a complex story of victories and violations. And but I would say that the fight is on, and we are really not doing bad. And I'm really not exaggerating with this Kolkata bias heavily on me. But these are facts. So, for example, in chapter 8 itself, I think I have done a kind of a comparative, not comparative, but a chronological exploration of activism in the pre-Ramsar period and activism during the post-Ramsar period. So I took this Ramsar period as the landmark, so 2002, and how activism from the early 1990s actually enabled EKW to get this Ramsar status. And then what happened, because even within the Ramsar site, in the post-2002 period, some development projects were sanctioned. And even within 12,500 hectares, the wetlands made way to real estate. But then again, the city saw waves or huge protests against this, mainly through PILs, but also through several other protest mechanisms and tactics. And now the good news is that the Kolkata police has also become quite careful about this, and the EKWMA is really playing an important role. It also depends on the bureaucrats and also the person who are in charge of things. So the good news is that we have a good CTO, and I think that people are quite mobilized now. And one good news, I think it's a small attempt, but what is happening is that through our MOOC, the idea is to understand urban ecological heritage scapes through interactive governance. But as we are very passionate about this Kolkata wetlands, and it is part of our long-term interest, so we are also eliciting interactive governance, eliciting the potential of interactive governance. So when we are organizing workshops, so all these different groups they are being brought together. And on 29th July, we had one of the workshops so far as this book project was concerned, where the CTO, the different NGOs, GROs, and several other people, academia, all of us, our team, we were there brainstorming on several issues, that the EKW is actually facing. And so what is happening is that through multi-stakeholder engagement and exchanges, we are being able to know from each other, empathize with each other, and map and identify overlapping areas where we can work together. And there can be sustained collective action. So I think, Alka, we are in this phase of renewed activism. So it is there and in a much bigger way. And again, Friday Waters, I think, would be happy to know that different organizations are also trying to mobilize the young adults, the children, through, by arranging this walks and tours, transacting through the wetlands. And also our MOOC will be this kind of an educational course that anyone, for example, class 5, class 6 standard students, they will be able to understand the value, the heritage value of the wetlands. So we are trying to, all of us, I think, are trying to come up with new ways, innovative mechanisms through which, this story can be narrated, and the cherishable moments can actually be cherished together. And again, how by mapping and eliciting interactive governance, the wetland ecosystem of Kolkata can really be, valued and cherished and treasured by all of us. So this is happening in a new way. It has really found a new avatar, and I think the journey it has started, and all of us will go a long way because we now know that we'll be able to thrive and survive. Our survival and sustenance depends on the survival and sustenance of the city, who is where the city is absolutely not separable from her blue infrastructure.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Jenia, for your wonderful insights, and it's inspiring to see the scope of your work. I believe it's a project that you've taken on for over a decade at this point, and it takes some real commitment to be able to take things through so consistently over such a long time, to give us such a comprehensive peek into the environmental history of Calcutta. I'd also like to thank Mansi, Garima, and Alka for inviting me, giving me an opportunity to go through Jenia's work and participate in today's event. So thank you so much, and I look forward to the future events. I think I'll hand it over to Garima now for the closing note.
Thanks, Ashini. Jenia, thank you so much. That was a very amazing presentation. All of us learned a lot about Kolkata and about how the wetlands serve a very important purpose. Also, in today's times, in the environment movement, it's very easy to pick a side. And I think your book tells us that it's not the right way very often, and it's not okay to do that. And every story has multiple perspectives. So that was a great learning for me personally, and I think for a lot of others here. So we will be closing this session today. And before closing, as you can see in the chat box, 19th August, we will have our next session, which will be the Thesis Club. Our speaker will be Mahek Kotecha. She will be speaking on a thesis. Her topic is Interlinked Lakes, Decision Support Tool for Lake Planning and Management. And in case any of you wants to get updates, you can leave your emails in the chat box. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and hope to see you again next Friday.
Thanks.
Great session, huh? Thanks, Jenia.
Thank you. Thanks all of you. Thank you.
All of you. And the girls did very well, huh?